Welcome to Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I am Brandon Strange of Sports Map Houston. He is Joel Blank of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 here in Houston. Thanks for coming in and talking to me. I want to talk some Rockets with you. Before we do that, just want to remind everybody again, as always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Joel, when Rafael Stone rebuilt the roster earlier this season, we knew that there was very, very little margin for error. That margin turned out to be the size of Christian Wood's ankle. So now the name of the game appears to be youth movement. But before you can bring in the new, you got to go out with the old. John Wall, let's start there. He has the most, I'd say, cumbersome or challenging contract to move on the roster. We knew that coming into it. We didn't know how he would perform. He's definitely shown that he can still play. What can they do with him?
Well, you know what, Brandon? I don't know that they can do much. I think that if his contract was a little bit more advantageous, there'd be teams that would be willing to take him on because, as you said, he's proven after almost a 2-year hiatus, he can play. But at that dollar figure, unless you are willing to give up some more draft picks like you had to do with Chris Paul to get Russell Westbrook, I don't think the organization can even fathom trying to find a trade partner for John Wall. And unfortunately, it's not just John Wall. As you mentioned, I think as you go down the roster and you look, there are opportunities for the Rockets to get younger, to make more moves.
Are we just saying that it's probably better to keep John Wall and kind of have him be a veteran mentor for a younger roster if you know you're going to be in a youth movement, maybe a la Chris Paul?
Yeah, I think, Brandon, the good thing is he likes it here. It was a tough move for him to get him out of a place that he was very comfortable in Washington, D.C. But the fact that the organization welcomed him with open arms, he wants to be here. So he'll be fine mentoring other players. He's already doing that with some of the young guys like Jayshawn Tate, David Nwaba, and others. And I think that he will be a good veteran piece in that locker room that you don't have to worry about.
All right, I want to talk to you about how Vic Oladipo plays into this, but before we do that, tell us about Fitz Roofing.
Fitz Roofing is a company that we love. They support us. They support the people of Houston, Texas. And the greatest thing is, with all the bad weather we've had and all the people dealing with all the issues, you can get them to do a free, no-obligation inspection that costs you nothing, that might help you greatly when you're doing repairs, not only just roofing repairs, but repairs inside your house. All it takes is a phone call, 832-521-3001. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Vic Oladipo, did the Rockets kind of outsmart themselves in making that extra trade for Depot? And second part of that question is, what can they get for him now?
Well, the good news is that the notorious VOD does still have some value on the open market because he's got an expiring contract. He wants a new big deal. There are teams out there that want a little shot in the arm that figure they can get someone like Oladipo, maybe on the cheap, or don't have to give up too much to get him because, as we talked about, the Rockets would rather take young players, draft picks, and expiring contracts in return. So the Rockets totally outsmarted themselves, and you saw it the other night. If they would have just made the Harden deal with the Brooklyn Nets, took the 4 first-round picks, and also just kept Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, along with Christian Wood, you'd have 3/5 of a starting lineup that you could build around for the next 3, 5, 7 years and have a really good young nucleus to start the rebuild process. Unfortunately, it seems like Tillman Fertitta has set the mandate down and that it's all about the bottom line. And it was more important to get Oladipo and his expiring contract than it was to really firmly start the rebuild with some really solid pieces.
What's interesting is what we're seeing play out in the East right now, which it seems to be there's an arms race. There's 3 teams that really look like they're trying to jockey to make that finals run. How much does that arms race play into being able to unload some of these guys, especially when you've got a guy like PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon who have valuable playoff experience? They have contracts that aren't, crippling. How much does the East and its competitiveness play into being able to unload guys like PJ Tucker and Eric
It's
Gordon?
a big deal, Brandon. And the other thing that I would add to that is the relationships, because you got a guy in Philadelphia that knows your roster backwards and forwards, upside down, in Daryl Morey. So he's going to know right away if he wants to add either one of Eric Gordon or PJ Tucker or just one of them, but he'll know which one he wants, and he'll know that that player can or cannot fit with his roster. Same thing with James Harden. James Harden's going to go to tell the Brooklyn Nets people PJ Tucker and or Eric Gordon is or isn't the guy because of this, because he's played with them. He's been in the locker room with them, and as you've mentioned, he's been in a foxhole with them in the playoffs. So I think that's very advantageous to the Rockets. I think also from the perspective of winning and winning in a way in which you need role players to do multiple different things well, especially defensively like Tucker did a year ago during small ball, that's really exciting to a team like Milwaukee. who needs versatility, that doesn't have the money to kind of get 2 and 3 extra players. But PJ in the locker room, PJ on the defensive end, PJ as a guy that can get in there and really grind for you and play tough with tough-minded basketball. That's something that a lot of teams are going to want. But the more Rockets personnel that are out there with other teams, the better the chances are that a lot of the guys that the Rockets are trying to unload will find a home before the deadline.